Have you ever stopped and wondered, what if this life was never meant to be your final destination, but a classroom? What if every loss, every delay, every moment of confusion was not punishment, but instruction? Close your eyes for a second and imagine this. You enter a vast building with no signs, no teachers in sight, no syllabus handed to you. You are told nothing. You are simply placed here. And from the very first breath, the tests begin. Pain, love, fear, hope, time, forgetting. You're graded not by answers, but by how you respond when everything feels unfair. Most people never question this place. They assume reality is random, cruel, mechanical. But a few, and if you're here, this may include you, feel something deeper. A quiet discomfort, a sense that you don't quite belong, even while trying your best to fit in. Maybe you felt it during sleepless nights, staring at the ceiling, asking questions you never learned how to phrase. Maybe you felt it after achieving something you were told would make you happy, and realizing it didn't. Or maybe you felt it in moments of silence, when life suddenly feels staged, as if there's a lesson hiding behind the scene. Ancient traditions whispered it, mystics hinted at it, philosophers risked exile for suggesting it. This dimension is not a reward. It is not a prison. It is a school. And schools are not designed to be comfortable. They are designed to change you. Here's the unsettling part, and this is where most people turn away. If this reality truly is a school, then your struggles are not accidents. Your patterns are not random, and your pain is not meaningless. It means you are here to remember something about who you are. In this video, you are going to uncover why certain souls awaken early, why others resist the lessons, and why you may feel called to question reality itself, not in theory, not in abstraction, but in a way that changes how you see your past, your purpose, and the role you're playing right now. If this kind of perspective resonates with you, if you feel drawn to understanding life beyond the surface, consider subscribing. Not for content, but for continuity. Because what we explore here builds layer by layer, just like real awakening does. But before we can talk about who you truly are, there's something far more uncomfortable we need to face first. Because once you recognize why this school feels so confusing, so unfair, and so carefully designed to make you forget, you'll never experience reality the same way again. For most people, life feels like a straight line. Wake up, fulfill obligations, repeat. But for others, something begins to fracture that simplicity. And it never happens all at once. It arrives quietly, disguised as coincidence. It might start with dreams that feel too vivid, not symbolic in a vague way, but specific. Places you've never been, conversations that echo for days, faces you recognize without knowing why. You wake up with the strange feeling that the dream didn't end, that you simply returned to your body while something else continued without you. Or maybe it comes through your body first, a sudden pressure in the chest for no medical reason, a ringing in the ears during moments of deep thought, waves of exhaustion that sleep doesn't cure, or bursts of energy at night when the world goes silent and your mind refuses to rest. Doctors call it stress. Society calls it anxiety. But deep down, you sense that explanation doesn't quite fit. Then there are the moments of knowing. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they contact you the same day. You feel an urge to avoid a place, a conversation, a decision, and later realize it protected you. You walk into a room and instantly feel heavy, or calm, or unsettled, without a single word being spoken. These experiences begin to pile up, and that's when the real discomfort begins. Because you try to talk about it, and the words fall flat. People smile politely. They change the subject. They tell you you're overthinking, so you learn to stay quiet. And in that silence, a deeper question forms, not loudly but persistently. Why me? Why do I feel this way when others don't? Why does reality feel layered, like there's something happening beneath what everyone agrees is normal? This is where many people doubt themselves. They try to suppress it, distract themselves, work harder, scroll longer, stay busy, anything to avoid that inner pull. But the signs don't stop. They become patterns. You notice that challenges repeat until you respond differently. You notice that certain people enter your life at exact moments, teach something painful or profound, and then disappear. You notice that when you ignore your intuition, life tightens. When you listen, even briefly, things shift. This is not random, and it's not imagination. It is a language, subtle, symbolic, and deeply personal. A language this dimension uses to communicate with those who are ready to listen. The confusion you feel is not because you are broken. It's because you're trying to interpret a deeper signal using surface-level rules. And here's the part few are prepared to hear. The more sensitive you are to these signals, the harder this world can feel. Not because it's punishing you, but because you are being engaged more directly. If any of this feels familiar, if you've ever felt like life is quietly testing you while pretending not to, then subscribing isn't about following a channel. It's about staying connected to a conversation you already know is happening beneath the noise. Because once you recognize that these signs are not glitches, but messages, you're left with a far more unsettling question. What exactly is this world trying to teach you? And why does it feel like it only reveals its rules after you've already been tested? There is a first sign that appears in the life of almost everyone who begins to awaken. But it is so misunderstood that most people never recognize it for what it truly is. This sign is not a vision. It is not a voice. It is not a supernatural event. It is resistance. The moment you begin to question reality, even silently, life starts to respond differently to you. Paths that once felt automatic become difficult. Relationships that once felt stable begin to strain. Goals you chase with logic alone suddenly dissolve the moment you get close. At first, this feels cruel, personal, almost mocking. But ancient teachings, long before modern spirituality gave it names, describe this exact moment as the initiation phase. In mystery schools of Egypt, Greece, and the East, students were never given truth freely. They were observed, tested, pressured, not because knowledge was hidden out of arrogance, but because truth only reveals itself to those who can remain conscious under friction. This dimension operates the same way. Here is the hidden meaning most people never hear. When reality resists you, it is not blocking your path. It is measuring your level of identification. Are you reacting unconsciously or responding with awareness? Think about how often life seems to push the same emotional button: abandonment, rejection, injustice, powerlessness, different faces, different scenarios, but the same inner sensation. This repetition is not accidental, it is instructional. The system does not test what you say you've learned, it tests what still controls you. This is why spiritually sensitive people often experience life as more intense. Their lessons are not spread across decades, they are compressed, accelerated, personal. Because the moment you begin to observe yourself rather than identify completely with your reactions, you are no longer treated as asleep. And here is the part that feels almost forbidden to say: this world does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you believe yourself to be. If you believe you are small, life teaches you through limitation. If you believe you must struggle, life presents struggle as proof. If you believe you must earn worth, life withholds ease, not as punishment, but as curriculum. This is why manifestation techniques fail for so many people. They try to change outcomes without addressing identity. They speak affirmations while silently expecting resistance, and the system answers the deeper signal, not the spoken one. Ancient texts called this karma, not as moral judgment, but as momentum. Unconscious identity creates predictable experience. The first spiritual sign, then, is this. When life begins to challenge you exactly where you are unconscious, it means you are being engaged at a deeper level. You are no longer drifting, you are being instructed. And that realization changes everything. Because if resistance is feedback and repetition is curriculum, then the question is no longer, why is this happening to me? The real question becomes, what part of me is this world responding to? If this understanding resonates, if it feels like something you were meant to remember rather than learn, quietly supporting this space by liking the video or subscribing isn't about algorithms. It's about strengthening a shared field of awareness. A small circle of people willing to look beneath appearances, because once you grasp that this dimension is actively shaping you through personalized lessons, you are left facing a far more unsettling realization. What happens when someone finally learns how to respond correctly to the test, and the system has no choice but to reveal the next level? There was a time in my life when nothing looked wrong from the outside. I was functioning, productive, responsible, doing everything I was told would lead to stability. And yet, every morning felt heavy, as if I was waking up inside a role that no longer fit. The signs didn't arrive dramatically at first. They arrived as interruptions. I remember standing in line at a grocery store, staring at a shelf of identical products, when a sudden thought cut through the noise. This isn't real life. Not in a dissociative way, not in fear, but with a strange clarity, like remembering something obvious that I had somehow forgotten. That night, I dreamed of walking through a long hallway filled with doors. Some were open, most were locked. At the end of the hall, there was a mirror. When I reached it, I didn't see my face. I saw moments, choices I had made, words I never said, paths I didn't take. I woke up with my heart racing, not from fear, but from recognition. After that, reality began to respond differently. People started entering my life with uncanny precision. One taught me boundaries through betrayal. Another showed me compassion through loss. Each connection felt temporary, purposeful, almost scripted. When their lesson was complete, they vanished, not dramatically, just quietly. My body reacted too. Tightness in the throat whenever I stayed silent instead of speaking truth. A sinking feeling in the stomach when I agreed to something that betrayed myself. A sense of lightness, almost relief, when I chose discomfort over dishonesty. At one point, I tried to ignore it all. I told myself I was imagining patterns, that I needed rest, that life was simply stressful. That's when everything collapsed at once. The job fell apart. A relationship ended abruptly. Plans I had relied on dissolved within weeks. And in the silence that followed, something unexpected happened. For the first time, I stopped asking how to fix my life and started asking what it was trying to teach me. That question changed everything. Instead of reacting, I observed. Instead of forcing outcomes, I listened. Instead of chasing certainty, I allowed confusion to exist without running from it. And slowly, not magically, not overnight, the world softened. New opportunities appeared without force. Conversations carried depth instead of friction. Challenges still came, but they felt different, directed, precise, almost respectful. That's when I realized something profound. The suffering wasn't random. The breakdown wasn't failure. It was a transition between levels of understanding. I wasn't being punished for getting something wrong. I was being stripped of identities I had outgrown. And I've seen this pattern repeat in countless stories since then. People who hit a wall not because they're lost, but because they're ready. People whose lives fall apart right before they begin to make sense. If any part of this story feels familiar, if you've experienced moments where life seemed to dismantle everything you relied on, you're not alone in this process. Subscribing here isn't about following a creator. It's about staying connected to a shared exploration where these experiences are spoken about honestly, without dismissal. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment, a dream, a loss, a coincidence, a physical sensation that felt like more than chance, something that quietly shifted how you see reality? Share it in the comments. I read them, and some of these stories deserve to be spoken aloud because they reveal patterns no single person can see alone. Because once you understand that your breakdown may have been an initiation, you're left facing a question that changes how you interpret everything that comes next. What if the next challenge you're resisting isn't here to hurt you, but to teach you something you can no longer avoid learning? There is a second great spiritual sign. And unlike resistance, it doesn't arrive as pressure. It arrives as a pause. After a period of struggle, confusion, or collapse, something strange begins to happen. Life no longer feels like it's chasing you, cornering you, or forcing reactions out of you. Instead, it feels quieter, almost too quiet. Many people mistake this phase for stagnation. They think they've lost motivation. They think they've fallen behind. They think something is wrong. But this silence is not emptiness. It is space. Ancient teachings describe this moment as the shift from unconscious participation to conscious observation. When the soul has been tested through friction, the system introduces a subtler lesson: choice without pressure. Here's how you recognize this sign in real life. You notice that situations no longer provoke you the way they used to. The same comments, the same delays, the same personalities, but your reaction is softer, slower, sometimes absent altogether. You begin to sense options where before there were only impulses. You can speak or remain silent. You can engage or step back. You can explain yourself or let misunderstanding exist. This is not numbness. It is detachment without disconnection. And it is one of the most misunderstood spiritual milestones, because society rewards urgency, reactivity, constant movement. Stillness is often labeled laziness. Reflection is labeled weakness. But in this dimension as a school, stillness is advanced instruction. It means you are no longer being dragged through lessons. You are being invited to participate consciously. The hidden meaning of this sign is profound. When life gives you space, it is watching what you choose without pressure. This is where identity truly reveals itself. Do you rush to fill the silence with distraction? Do you recreate chaos because stillness feels unfamiliar? Or do you remain present long enough to hear what the silence is asking of you? Here is a simple technique you can apply immediately, not as a ritual, but as an experiment. For the next few days, practice what could be called the pause response. When something triggers you, emotionally, mentally, physically, do nothing for 10 seconds. No explanation, no justification, no internal storytelling. Just notice. Where do you feel it in your body? What emotion arises before thought? What action do you want to take automatically? Then ask yourself one quiet question. What would I choose if I wasn't trying to protect an identity? That's it. No forcing calm, no spiritual performance, just awareness. You may be surprised by what happens next. Some situations dissolve on their own. Some conversations change tone. Some people reveal themselves more clearly when you stop reacting. This is not because you are manipulating reality, but because reality responds differently when you are no longer predictable. This technique doesn't make life easier immediately. It makes it honest. And honesty is the gateway to the deepest lessons, because once you stop reacting automatically, you begin to notice something even stranger. Life starts offering choices that feel symbolic. Moments that seem small but carry weight. Decisions that feel like crossroads, even when no one else sees them. That's when the second sign completes itself. You realize that the school is no longer teaching you through force, it is testing whether you can recognize meaning without pain. And this is where most people fail without ever knowing they were being evaluated. If this insight resonates, if you feel that quiet recognition rather than excitement, consider subscribing. Not as a habit, but as a marker, a signal to yourself that you're willing to stay present for what unfolds next. Because beyond resistance, beyond silence, there exists a final sign, so subtle that it hides inside ordinary moments, and once you see it, you can no longer pretend you don't know who you are. There is a sign so subtle that it doesn't announce itself through pain, so quiet that it hides inside ordinary moments, and so profound that once it is recognized, nothing can ever be unseen. This is the sign most people pass through without realizing what just happened. It does not arrive as chaos. It does not arrive as silence. It arrives as recognition. One day, and there is no calendar date for this, you notice something almost unsettling. You are no longer fully inside the experience. You are aware that you are experiencing. You feel emotions, but they no longer consume you. You think thoughts, but they no longer define you. You move through situations, but something within you remains untouched. Ancient mystics called this waking up from the dream while still inside the dream. Esoteric Christianity described it as dying before death. Modern physics hints at it when it speaks of the observer effect, the idea that observation itself alters reality. But none of these explanations fully capture the feeling, because this sign doesn't feel intellectual. It feels intimate. It's the moment you realize that what you called yourself, your name, your story, your wounds, your victories, is something you have, not something you are. And this realization doesn't inflate the ego, it dissolves it. You begin to sense that this dimension was never asking you to become someone new, only to remember what has always been watching. This is why the school feels so intense. This is why forgetting was necessary, because lessons only work when the student believes the test is real. Here is the revelation few are prepared for. You were never meant to escape this world. You were meant to see through it, not with cynicism, not with detachment from life, but with presence so deep that fear loses its authority. This is the point where seeking slows down. You stop asking, "What should I do with my life?" and begin asking, "From where am I living?" You notice that suffering arises when identity collapses into form, and peace arises when awareness loosens its grip. Nothing external needs to change for this to occur. No perfect habits, no spiritual performance, just recognition. And this is why this sign is almost never taught openly, because it cannot be given. It can only be noticed. Right here, reading these words, you may feel it briefly. A stillness behind thought, a sense of distance from urgency, a calm that doesn't depend on answers. If you feel that, even for a second, you're not imagining it. This content exists for moments like this, not for trends, not for profit, but for resonance. If this message speaks to you, a simple like or subscription quietly strengthens this space and allows these explorations to continue. Every gesture matters more than it appears. But here is the part that changes everything, and this is where the tension returns. Once the observer awakens, once awareness recognizes itself, the school does not end. The lessons change. Because now, life no longer asks, "Can you survive the experience?" It asks something far more demanding. What will you choose to do, now that you remember who is choosing? If you've stayed until this moment, it's not by accident, not because of curiosity alone, not because of habit, but because something in you recognized this journey as familiar. What you've heard are not ideas meant to impress the mind. They are reminders meant to wake something up. The signs we explored were never separate events. They were stages of remembrance. Gentle at first, then disruptive, then quiet, and finally unmistakable. Resistance was not your enemy. Silence was not abandonment. Awareness was not distance from life. They were invitations. This dimension does not awaken everyone the same way. Some are shaken awake through loss, others through exhaustion, others through a moment of stillness so deep it feels like falling inward. No two paths look alike, but they all point to the same realization. You are not broken. You were never behind. You were never lost. You were learning how to see. And once you begin to see, something extraordinary happens. Life stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something that moves with you. Even uncertainty takes on a different texture. Even fear loses some of its grip. Not because it disappears, but because it is no longer in control. This is the quiet mission of awakening, not to escape the world, not to dominate it, but to walk through it with awareness, steady, present, and awake. Every interaction becomes meaningful. Every challenge becomes precise. Every choice becomes a reflection. And the most beautiful part, you don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to rush. Awakening spreads through presence, not persuasion. If these words resonated, if you felt moments of stillness or recognition while listening, then you are already part of this unfolding. Subscribing here is not about following a channel. It's about choosing to stay in touch with a frequency that supports this remembering. This space exists for those who feel the pull, even when they can't fully explain it yet, and I want to make this personal. If you feel called, leave a comment with your name and your city, not for visibility, but for connection. I read them, and in upcoming videos, I'll be offering personal acknowledgements because no awakening happens in isolation, even when the path feels solitary. You can also support this work in the simplest way, by liking the video. These small actions may seem ordinary, but they quietly strengthen a community built on awareness rather than noise. As you return to your life after this, remember this: the signs won't stop, the lessons won't end. But now, you're no longer walking through them unconsciously. This dimension is still a school. The difference is you finally remember why you're here. And the question that remains is no longer whether you will awaken, but how deeply you're willing to live from that awareness.